Thank you all. We got there. 50 episodes of the podcast. Just over a year since we published the first one on 10th of December 2022. And yeah, what a fucking journey it's been. Having started the podcast, I don't think I expected to get to 50 episodes. It's been a long journey in that process with a hiatus in the middle, which I did say a while ago when I started it back up in November that I would get into that and as to why there was a hiatus. But yeah, I wanted to sit down, do a one-on-one episode, just me, and I'll tell my story of the podcast, my story, and announce some things which are coming up in the next few weeks and months. So if you're interested in that, stay and listen. If not, happily fuck off, because if you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here. But if you do want to be here, please like, subscribe, share the podcast with anyone who's interested, and also leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Amazon or wherever, because that really does help me grow the podcast. So to start out with on this podcast, I'd like to announce something big which is happening in October of this year. So in October of this year, I'm going to be running 100 kilometers in a day for Calm charity. I'll be making the run from Point Impossible Car Park, which is just outside of Torquay in Victoria in Australia. And then I'll be running to Apollo Bay with a good friend of mine, Alex Cleary, who I had on the podcast. There isn't a set date for this yet, but it definitely will be happening in October, as I will be back over in Melbourne during October and November, which I can't wait for. I'm so excited to go back because I've been back in the UK now since end of November, start of December, and I'm really missing it. Really missing Melbourne. But yeah, I'm running for Calm charity, which is campaign against living miserably. And the reason I'm running for Calm charity is because it's got a place quite close to my heart. In July of last year, so 2023, a lot of things happened. A lot of things in my life went how I didn't think they would, and things accumulated and kept accumulating and kept going. Just things kept going downhill, kept spiraling out of control. But the worst part about it is I didn't have the knowledge or the foundations in place to attack those and to allow myself to feel what was going on or to express how I was feeling about them. And they were eating me up over months and months of battling with that. I, one night, on an impulse, decided to try and take my own life. It's actually quite surprisingly fucking hard to talk about. Fuck me. I tried to take my own life. I won't go into the details, but essentially, just on an impulse, I was at home one night with my brother, and I went upstairs, and I'd been feeling really, really shit for days, and this particular day I just felt awful, and it all just hit at once, and I can't describe why I did it, or I can't tell you what instigated it, but I had a bottle of ephedrine tablets which make you severely drowsy and doesn't take a lot to overdose on them, and I think there must have been about 20 in the bottle, and I just threw all 20 in my hand, and just put them with a drink, downed it, and I crazily went and sat back downstairs with my brother. And then I remember when they all started hitting me, and me and him were just chatting, and I just went, all right, I'll see you in the morning, and just got off to bed. And I was so high, like that's the only way to describe it. I was so high, and I remember putting my head to the pillow and just thinking, I'm probably not going to wake up tomorrow. And I tell you what, thank fucking God that wasn't the case. Thank fucking God that I did wake up the next day. I remember waking up with heart palpitation. I actually just felt like I was having a heart attack, and I even went to work the next day, and the entire time I just felt like I was having a heart attack. I was sweating, and I just basically isolated myself from everyone in work that day, and just wouldn't talk to anyone. And that was tough. It was really, really tough, because I couldn't process why I tried to do that, and I couldn't understand it myself. But the worst part was what I put my brother through. Like, my brother was in the flat, and I tried to take my own life while he was there and didn't tell him. I didn't ask for help. And the first thing, if anyone's in a situation, is to ask for help, because it doesn't just affect you at the end of the day. If you attempt suicide, it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. It affects your loved ones, it affects your friends, it affects people who know you, who you don't maybe know that well. And just know, if you're ever in that situation, that people do love you and people do care about you. All you have to do is ask for help. Because it wasn't after that, I didn't speak to anyone after that. There was a big life change of mine that happened not a few weeks later, and I had surgery, and I was struggling with the surgery and the recovery process, and I felt the same again. And rather than attempting something stupid again, because I knew that I thought, surely there's more to life than feeling like this, I called my mates and told them how I was feeling. I called my mum. I remember that conversation with my mum, and I cried. I burst out crying on the phone, and that was probably the hardest conversation I've ever had to have with anyone, was telling my mum that I tried to take my own life, and that I was just screaming out for help. Basically, it was awful. But yeah, having those conversations, it meant, because when you're in that situation and you're not necessarily talking to your friends, or you're not messaging each other, and you're not asking how someone is, it's because people have their own lives to get on with, and sometimes that people can get caught up in that. But I assure you that even though you feel lonely, if you reach out to someone and say that you're struggling, they will more than likely, if they're a good person, they will help you. They will message you, they will ask how you are on a daily basis, they'll call you. The amount of my friends that were calling me on a regular basis and messaging me, just asking if I'm all right, and even if they just FaceTime me and we just sat chatting shit and there was no substance to a conversation, they did it because people care. People absolutely do care. And don't think that for a second that people don't care about you, because I can tell you for sure that people absolutely do care about you. And yeah, during that time as well, I used a suicide hotline, because the time difference to where a lot of my friends are and my family was 11 hours, and it was the middle of the night for them. I was post-surgery, I'd really struggled, and I was drinking a bit during the day, and I was just on my own. So I was like, I can't keep doing this. So I called a mental health hotline in Australia. I can't remember which one it was. And you know what? I'm not saying this is the case for everyone and for every time one of these hotlines answers the phone, but for me, they didn't help at all. And this is why I want to work with Calm, is because I want to see better provision for suicide prevention and hotlines, especially in the UK where I am, because I feel like the mental health provisions in the UK are pretty terrible. If someone wants to seek therapy through the NHS, you're on a 6-month waiting list. I think there's overprescription of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. They don't fix anything, they merely mask the problem. I think that suicide hotlines and helplines should be open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and currently they're not. And that's a big problem, because people don't just suffer within given hours of a day. They suffer at any moment, at any time. It's unpredictable, and we don't know when it's going to happen. And I feel like what Calm are doing is they're not just focusing on suicide prevention, but they're focusing on helping anyone who suffers abuse, mental health issues, drug addiction, anything along those lines where it can really mess with someone's life. They are willing to help people. And my goal with this run is to help people. It's to raise some money for a very good charity and really work to better provisions for mental health in the UK. I just think that there's so much more that can be done, and I think Calm are on the right track to do that. They're doing fantastic work. But when I was going through that, I had knee surgery, and during that time when I was sat there, I couldn't do anything, and I could barely walk. I was thinking, I want to do something. I want to help other people. That's my purpose. My purpose is to help others, and if that's by raising money for charity, that's how I'm going to do that. I remember actually when the week before I came back to the UK in September for a holiday, and the week before I was due to fly back, my mum messaged me, and she was like, I've booked a flight out to Melbourne to see her. I hadn't seen her in over a year at that point, and I really appreciate her for doing that, because it took my mind off everything, really. She was just like, my mum is one of the most amazing people in the world, and she has given up a lot for me to be where I am now, and I can't thank her enough for what she did during that time, and also just being a mum. She was absolutely fantastic. She put up with a lot of crap from me, because when you're in that headspace as well, you don't want to see the light of day. People give you options, they help you talk things through, but you won't see any positive in any of it. You just see the negative. And that's the one thing I've learned from this process, is people can help you and people will point you in the right direction. But sure as shit, they can't do the work for you. You have to do the work yourself. And that's what I found hardest, was doing the work myself. I'd suffered with mental health problems on and off from 14 years of age to last year. And I'm not saying I don't have mental health problems now, because I feel like everyone is on a balancing act of good and bad. And it's never a case of you finish with mental health and it's done, because if you don't maintain it, it's eventually going to capitulate. It's like your physical health. If you can run marathons and all of a sudden you stop running, don't expect to run a marathon in a year's time if you don't train for that. It's the same with your mental health. If you don't maintain it, if you don't do the things that you need to stay on top of it, it's sure as shit going to be the case that you're going to go downhill. And the problem is I didn't have those foundations in place in the first place to help myself when all this happened. So I had to learn that. I had to learn those things. I had to try things, and I had to fail at things. And that, I had to look at things and go, this is absolutely crap. And I had to look at other things and go, this was amazing. And yeah, having the support around you does help, but at the end of the day, you've got to do the work. If you don't do the work, if you don't put the time in to do that, then you're never going to get better. It's as simple as that. And you may say, I have kids and a family that I have to deal with. I have work, work takes over my life. All this, that's fine. But you can take time for yourself. You can always take, even if it's during your drive to work, listen to a podcast on how to better your mental health. If you have time to go to the gym, you have time to work on your mental health. And that's something I want to point out as well, is your physical health massively contributes to your mental health. The difference because I had knee surgery because my patella was in two parts, which had basically caused, so one of the parts was mobile and it was causing rubbing of the ligaments, and everything had tightened, and it was causing tendinopathy. I was getting patella pain. I could barely go up and down the stairs, which meant that my activity levels had been severely limited. I'd gone from, running 10, 12, 13 miles to not being able to run at all. I couldn't use a bike. And my gym work had reduced, and everything, like not being able to exercise. Fucking hell. That was hard. That was hard. And it definitely contributed to poor mental health. But also it made me learn that I can't just use physical exercise as an out of dealing with my mental health. So I did deal with it. I did take the time. I took time away from getting fit and, training to actually look after my mental health and get that in a place where I could actually enjoy training again and not see it as I have to do it. It's a case of I get to do it now. I want to get on to some things that helped me overcome my mental health problems, just because I think they might be useful for some people. And, if my goal is to help people, and if that's raising money for charity through the run and stuff, then that's great. But also I want to help people in terms of putting them in the right direction of things to do. Firstly, if you're a uni student, you will more than likely get access to a therapist free through the uni. So utilize it. Don't procrastinate on it. Have a look at your university's website. It will more than likely list what you can access on there. And that's how I access therapy through the uni I was at the time. Another one would be journal. And it may sound really cringy to some people, and to you may think that's not going to work for me. Well, I was exactly the same. I thought it wasn't going to work for me. But I tell you what, looking back at what I wrote during the worst times to what I write now, you can see progress. Progress is tangible that way. I can look back at that time and I can sort of vaguely remember a lot of it, but a lot of it is a blur because of the state I was in. But having written it down means I can look back exactly at what I was thinking on that day, at that given moment in time. And you can see the pattern, and you can also see change. And the change was one of the biggest ones that helped over the couple months, seeing change in a couple months and reading back. I was like, fucking hell, I've come a long way. And now, with what I think 8 months on, it's a very, very, very long way that I've come, and I'm proud of myself for that. But being able to read it really helped me understand that and have some form of gratitude for it. Another one I would say is change the way you speak. Like I said before, it's not a case of I have to do this. It's I get to do this. That's just one of a million ways you can change the way you speak. So many people these days, I was one included, are so negative, and they don't understand how that affects their mental health. When you're negative about everything that happens in a day, how do you expect to feel good about yourself? How do you expect to want to pursue anything? You are just going to find the excuse to get out of doing something. You're going to moan about how shit that thing tastes that you ate the other night. You're going to be annoyed at the fact that you only got 6 hours sleep. When if you look at it, all of it's on you at the end of the day. If you went out to a restaurant to eat food and the food was shit, who picked the restaurant? You did. If you didn't pick it, your friend did. You could have picked somewhere else. Like, if you got 6 hours sleep, why was that? If it's because of your kid, then fair enough. But you can't control that. Like, that's an uncontrollable. So in the first episode of the podcast, with Leon Bustin, we spoke about controlling the controllables. You can control what you can control. So whether that's, picking the restaurant you go to, whether that's how you make your coffee in the morning or what time you leave for work. And you can't control the uncontrollables. So if you've got a baby that gets up in the night and cries, you can't control that. So don't worry about it. If you can't sleep because, you sat on your phone for 3 hours, control that. Put your phone away earlier and get a good night's sleep. And that's another tip is get good sleep. Try and get good sleep in any which way you can, because a good night's sleep I've found has really helped me in terms of my moods in the morning. I don't just wake up groggy and I used to be tired constantly because I was getting about 6 hours of sleep a night, whereas now, it's like 7.5, but that works for me and that's fine, and I feel good on that. I can function on that. So just work at the things that you can control, what you can control, and forget about what you can't control, because at the end of the day, if you can't control it, you can't worry about it. But yeah, after taking a long tangent as to the why behind the run, the run's going to be 100 kilometers, and I've probably bitten off more than I can chew. So since surgery, because it was of the knee, I couldn't run for a while, and in November I started running again. Got back into running, slowly built up, which was fair, but the entire time, like, my Achilles were just taking a battering. I did my longest run on Saturday just gone, which was just over 10k, so I've got another 90k to go on top of that. But I've had an Achilles issue because I did too much hiking and too much running all at once and wasn't allowing myself to recover. I am bad for that, and it's something I need to really get better at, is allowing myself to recover and saying no to things, because when my mates go, let's go for a hike, I just say yes and don't think about the recovery aspect of it. I just go and do it. So yeah, I'm recovering from an Achilles issue, but it's fine. I'm managing to keep up my miles, which is good. So yeah, I've got another 7 months to train for this 100k, and I'll be doing it with Alex Cleary, who I had on the podcast. I interviewed him on New Year's Day, and we basically spoke about doing one hard thing a year. It's a principle of Misogi. It's a Japanese principle. You do one hard thing on one day of the year to affect the other 364 days. And he asked me what my one hard thing was, and I was like, I want to run an ultra. So he was like, let's do it. And then I looked at ultras to run in Australia, and there was none that really aligned with the timing of the trip. And I was like, fuck it, let's just do our own. So we're going to be doing our own run, which is from, if I remember rightly, Point Impossible car park to Apollo Bay, along the Great Ocean Road, which is just outside of Melbourne. Has a special place in my heart. I used to go surfing down there quite a lot. Loved it. It's just, there's something about the place that will always draw me back to it. So that's going to be fun. So I've got 7 months to train for that. I also will be documenting the process of training for that, physio, anything in between, on a separate Instagram account that I have, which is m.ethan with 2 A's, and on TikTok as well, ethan.morland. I'll link those in the description in the show notes, and you can follow along on there. I just thought it'd be good way of helping raise more money, because if we can build more awareness around it outside of the podcast and outside of my personal socials, then it means I can raise more money. And I am setting myself a pretty audacious goal in terms of the amount I want to raise. That is £10,000. So if you would like to donate to the cause which I'm running for, which is calm, then please donate at the link in the description. You'll find it in my Instagram bio as well. You'll find it on my link tree. So please, please, please go and donate, as £10,000 is a lot of money, but it can also help make a lot of change. Thanks. Much appreciated. But yeah, back onto the podcast side of things. I wanted to start a podcast God, I think I must have been 18. You know, I used to listen to like The Fighter and the Kid, Joe Rogan Experience, a few different American podcasts and stuff. I used to listen to some comedy ones and that. And I just used to love the fact that people could have long form conversations. And when I started listening to more and more podcasts, I started thinking, I wish I could ask this, or I wish I could speak to this person and have this conversation and, you know, just have a long form conversation. And for 3.5 years, I'm going to say, I wanted to start a podcast and I did nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. Because I assumed people would take the piss. People would take the piss out of me. And I assumed that people would make comments and that it would do shit and that it would never make it anywhere. So I didn't do anything about it for 3.5 years. And then I moved to Melbourne. And for some reason, I had a change of mindset about it. I think it was because I was over the other side of the world from the people that I knew and the small town that I'm from, that I thought this could be my opportunity because I don't know anyone here. And if someone asks what I do for my hobbies, and I say that I do a podcast, that's fine. Whereas when I was in the UK, I just assumed people would judge me. And yeah, in October, I did my first interview. I did it with my friend Jack. And it's funny because I need to get Jack on because that episode was never released because it was fucking awful from my part. He came on the podcast at the time. He was living out the back of his van in the UK. You know, he was making the most of van life. I think it was towards the end of COVID. And he came on and I remember coming out of the episode and thinking, Christ, yeah, this was a class interview. And then when I was editing it back, I quickly realised, oh my God, this is fucking awful. I just interrupted him the entire time. And he had some good stories, but I just, some reason, just shut every one of them off. And it was terrible. But I learned from that and I pushed through, went into other interviews. And, you know, I still make mistakes now, 50 episodes in, and I still interrupt people. I still say I still say, do you know what I mean? Even though people clearly fucking know what I mean. And that's the best bit of it, is learning how to be better at something. And, you know, I did my first episode that actually went live with Leon Bustin, and it was a 2-hour-long conversation. And there was things that I would like to have changed and I would have done differently, but you can never change them, and you can only put out there what you have. So I did that. And, you know, the goal initially was to do 10 episodes, and I did 10 episodes. I had some amazing guests on in that time. I had, you know, likes of Leon Bustin. I had Elliot Rain, Joe Taylor, Jules King, one of my favourite people in the world. You know, Akana Murray Bartlett. I had some, amazing people. Ben Norberg, some amazing people. And it was funny because at the time, I was just reaching out to people who I found really interesting and not expecting a reply from any of them. And then when I got a reply from some of them, I had moments where I was like, fuck, let's fucking go. Like, this is fucking sick. And I just remember that buzz, and I was like, I can't. Like, I'm just getting so excited about the conversations I was having and getting guests on. It made me feel so good, and I was like, I can't let go of this at all. Like, I remember coming out of conversations, and my partner at the time, I used to go downstairs to her and be like, I just had this conversation with this person about this, and it was amazing, and this and that happened, and this happened, and we talked about this, and I don't think I'd ever spoken I hadn't spoken like that about something in a long, long time, and I quickly realised that this was my passion, being able to have these long-form conversations with people and understand the hows and the whys behind what they do. And at the time, the podcast was called Quantum, because I don't know, I just thought it was like some, like, you know, high performance energy kind of vibe. And actually the logo was terrible. You can actually still find it if you go back to the first episodes on Spotify. The logo was awful. The name had no meaning really behind it. Like, I just was like, oh, that's cool. And I think it was about 11 or 12 episodes in, I changed it to Real Lives, because that has a lot of meaning. It's about telling the real stories behind the real people. And because the goal of the podcast at first, I kind of thought of it as like, oh, I want high performers on. And you can hear that in some of the intros to the early episodes. It's like interviewing high performers and this and that. When actually what I want to do is tell real stories. I want to talk to people who, I want to talk to people who are experts in parenting. I want to talk to, midwives. I want to talk to policemen, which I have done. I want to talk to, former drug addicts. I want to talk to people who've been to prison and have changed their lives. I want to talk to these high performers as well, ultra runners, skateboarders, snowboarders, bobsled athletes, runners, you name it. I want to talk to people. And it's because I feel like there's so much you can learn from all these different kinds of people. One of the most impactful episodes I did was with a former drug addict who attempted to take her own life and was arrested and spent time in prison and couldn't take her own life because she was in prison. Hearing her story and hearing how hard she had it, to then be able to turn that around and make the most of her life. Danielle Burkett, what a powerful woman. Like Jules King, undiagnosed with Parkinson's for 16 years, was in a wheelchair, couldn't feed herself, struggled to move, function on a daily basis. She just came second in Wadapalooza in Miami, one of the biggest CrossFit competitions in the world. The woman is one of the biggest inspirations in my life. Ben Pearson, former police officer, had a mental breakdown as a result of the stuff he was seeing at work. He now has his own podcast, is a mental health advocate, and has a YouTube channel. He's done so well for himself since. Rob Pope, he watched Forrest Gump, loved the film, ran the run across America, 5 times across America in 400 and odd days. What a fucking human. And this is it. I get to speak to these people. I get to have these conversations. I get to ask them the questions which I want to ask them. Who else gets to say they do that? And yeah, I've had stick. Yeah, I've had comments. People haven't liked certain episodes. But you know what? I'm fine with that because I'm learning and I enjoy what I do. I really, really enjoy what I do. Like, I have a full-time job as well as doing this, and this takes up a hell of a lot of time on the side of that, I can tell you. But you know what? It's not work because I found a passion. And when you're so passionate about something, it isn't work. It's the thing that makes you tick on a daily basis. Like if I didn't have this podcast, God knows what I would be doing, because one, I'd have so much time on my hands, and two, I wouldn't have learned any of the things that I've learned from all these people. Talking to DEA agents, I never would have thought I would have had a conversation with people like that. So Olympians, who would have thought I'd be having a conversation with an Olympian? Not me. Certainly not me. I'm your average Joe, mate. Like, did not think that. And what it's done is it's helped me in my own life to pursue things that I love, to be more confident. Speaking to people who you don't know for over an hour each time you have a conversation with, someone about a topic. I've got to learn about that topic. I've got to learn about them. I need to learn statistics to do with whatever it is it may be. For example, I spoke with a counsellor the other day, so we learned. I read research into social media use and mental health problems, and screen time and mental health, hobbies and mental health. I had to learn these things. So I'm educating myself in the process, and also getting to just ask questions that I think people would want to know the answer to. And it's funny because I've spoke to some people and they're like, why do you do that? And, what's the point? And I'm like, well, because it's just fucking fun at the end of the day. I enjoy it. It's like, if you go play football on a weekend, that's fun for you. So that's your thing. My thing is this. I like to do a podcast. I also like to run and do other things. But, aside from that, podcasting, that's my thing. And, so there's the sort of the why behind I started a podcast. But I also get asked a lot of questions, just in general. Like, I've had a few through DMs and stuff, and I've had people reach out to me When I speak to people, meet people, and they find out I do a podcast, these are just typically some of the questions that I get asked. So I thought I would answer them, do a little Q&A. So one of them, the biggest one I get asked is, do I make money? Do I fuck? I don't make a penny from the podcast right now. I've got something in the works with a potential sponsor, which is great because that'll be the first sponsor of the podcast. And if it comes off, I'm so excited about it because it's a really great company and it would be great to support a company like that. But no, I don't make a penny. So buying equipment and stuff, that's all out of my own pocket. Traveling to Belfast and places like that, it's out of pocket. All of it, like I need to upgrade equipment and stuff. I know I do. But at the end of the day, I also want to live my life, and you have to make sacrifices. And right now, using my iPad and my phone to film in-person episodes and using my laptop to do the online ones does the job. It does the job for me right now. And at some point I will upgrade. It's just a case of saving. And, moving back to the UK from Melbourne wasn't cheap. So, and also not having a job for 2 months after I left my PhD. It skints you, really does. Don't make a penny, but because I love it, don't care. Happy to keep it that. I'm happy to keep it that way. Who's been my favourite guest so far? Now, I've had some amazing guests on. I've also had some which are questionable, and I'm not going to name, but the ones that stand out as my favourite guests so far, I would have to say Jules King, episode 6, I believe. She's amazing. One of the most inspirational people I've ever met in my life. And, as I said before, Parkinson's undiagnosed for 16 years. Her life was basically over. She was in a wheelchair, couldn't move. She had to be fed. I remember telling me she had to have a seatbelt wrapped around her at the table, around the chair while she was at the table so she didn't fall into her food. And now she came second in Wadapalooza. It's crazy. And me and Jules still keep in touch. She's, absolutely amazing, such a positive light. And when I do, I don't speak to her for, a bit of time here and there. And then all of a sudden we're on the phone for 2 hours and just having a great conversation. And I plan to get Jules on again soon. We're trying to arrange a date for me to go down to Pembrokeshire to go and film with her, which will be amazing. Do some training and stuff. And then, other than that, favourite guests, Christ. Like, for younger me, Ben Nordberg, episode 2, that was absolutely one of my favourite ones. He was my favourite skater growing up. And, I was shit at skateboarding. I was absolutely shit at skateboarding. But for me to be able to have a conversation with someone who I looked up to as a kid was incredible. And to be able to ask the questions as a kid, I was like, I'd watch his videos and go, how's he done this? How's he done that? And to be able to ask all the questions that I'd wanted to ask as 13, 14, 15-year-old me, oh, what a day. What a day that was. So I really enjoyed that one. I'd have to say for a third one, probably Rob Pope. What a guy. It was funny as well, that episode. So we've been trying to plan it for months, and I was going to do it over video call. And I remember getting a message from him, and he was like, hey, mate, I can do tomorrow. And I said, cool. Can we do it at your place? No. Can you come to me? No. And he said, maybe call some of the pubs around his local area. So I'm calling all the local pubs in his area, and one of them, the White Horse in Woolton, they picked up and they just went, yeah, sure, come in tomorrow. We'll give you a booth, and you can film. And just the conversation I had with him, he's just a crazy guy with a crazy life. He ran across America 5 times, had a kid in the process, remortgaged his house to do it. Nearly qualified for the Olympics to run marathons for Australia when he's British. The guy has lived a pretty mega life, and just to be able to have a conversation with him was incredible, and also then have a pint afterwards and just enjoy time together. And it was funny when he turned up in very Forrest Gump fashion, just had the Forrest Gump hat on, And he just rocked up. He's like, "Hey mate," just dead chill, just dead nice guy. So I really enjoyed that one, to be honest. And another one I get asked by, particularly online, is what are my tips for people who want to start a podcast? Just start. Everyone says it. Just start. Do it. Genuinely do it. Because if you don't just start, you'll never do it. I sat on it for 3.5 years and never did anything about it. And then when I did something about it, the momentum was there, and I kept at it. Kept at it for a long time. And, it's been a year, nearly a year and a half since I filmed that first episode, and I'm still going 50 episodes in. I've actually got other episodes that I've filmed, so I'm about 54 episodes in, actually, which is pretty crazy. So, firstly, just start. Secondly, I would say be proactive with your time. Getting guests takes a lot of effort, especially at the start, because you have no portfolio of what you've done. So it's very hard to get people to agree to something when this thing may stop in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Whereas when, like, now people can see that I've done 50 episodes, they're like, okay, this guy's here for the long run. So be proactive with your time. Don't just reach out to people who have big followings, because sometimes actually they aren't the best people to have on your podcast. Reach out to people, smaller content creators. Reach out to people who don't have a following. Just look to tell stories that you're interested in. Find what you're interested in and tell that. But when you do it, be proactive in terms of finding guests and also editing videos. Set aside time. I have an 8-hour-a-day job, so I have to set aside time in the evenings and in the morning before I start work to do it. I also have to set aside time to go to the gym and stuff like that. Block out time, periods which are designated to certain things, which can allow you to make the most of it. Because for me, if I don't block out time, I'm probably not doing that thing. I need to know that that's exactly what I'm going to be doing for this given period of time. Like this podcast, I blocked out this period of time, so I knew that this is what I'm going to be doing. That's, it's that simple. So be proactive is the second one. And thirdly, don't compare yourself to others. In a year, so since the first episode released, a year and 4 months, the podcast has a total over YouTube and audio platforms, something like close to 40,000 downloads, which is pretty mental. That is a stupid number. But that's a year and 4 months worth of work. And I've seen podcasts which have been going for less time, and I've seen podcasts which have been going for more time, which have more views, more followers, all this, that. And at the start, I got really hung up on the amount of downloads and views I was getting on podcasts. I would literally check it every single day. And it is good to measure progress and to see what you can do to change to make things better and get more downloads and etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the numbers don't matter. I believe in this so much that I will continue to do it until I physically can't, basically. And if I make it a full-time job in the process, that is fantastic. But if I don't, I'm also happy with that, because I know that I've tried. And if I compared myself to some of the biggest podcasts in the world, then I would get nowhere, because I see the numbers they're getting, and you just be like, oh, I'm never going to get there. And you know what? One day I might get there, one day I might not. But who's asked at the end of the day? I get to learn from the conversations that I'm having. That's the main thing. And it's just a bonus that I get to share that with the world. So the numbers are just numbers. They don't mean anything. What matters is what you learn from the process of podcasting. Whether you've learned to video edit, you've learned to edit audio, whether you've, learned about a particular topic which you wanted to learn about but have never gotten around to. You get to learn these things now in these conversations. So go out there and bloody do it. Simple as that. I've had so many conversations where the audio's been shit, on my end for some reason or another, whether that's because, whether the person's not being reciprocated in terms of, they've said like they'll collaborate on something and they don't, or, stuff happens and you can't get hung up on it, because at the end of the day, people have their own lives and they don't really give a shit about you. And it's as simple as that. Like, that's probably one of the things that helped me get, like, to the headspace I'm in now, in terms of, like, probably the best mental space I've ever been in, was realizing that people don't give a shit. I used to care about what people think so much, and realizing that actually people don't bat an eyelid at what you do because they've got their own things going on, helped me realize I can just go on 100 million miles an hour at what I love, and there'll be no repercussions for doing that. Obviously, if you do something fucking stupid, there probably will be, but I can pursue the things that I love, and if people are good people, they'll be happy for you. And, I've got good people around me, so they're happy for me and what I'm doing. And, my friends may not listen to my podcast, or, may not care about what I do, but they're happy for me because I'm happy. And it's as simple as that. Like, people will just be happy for you if you're happy doing what you're doing. Another one I get asked quite often, and it's quite a weird one, is how long does each episode take me to edit from start to finish? And this obviously varies, but like, in terms of, if it's an online video call, they're the quickest, just because I just find the audio is easier to edit. Because you have two separate tracks and the audio is attached to each track, it's just so much more streamlined. So they are typically, I would say, like, filming it, if you include filming an episode, so if you start with filming, you film that episode, you then edit that back, you then, find the clips, you make the clips, you then put it online, you write your descriptions, make your thumbnails, do your SEO keywords, all that stuff. Probably, depending on the episode, between 4 and 6 hours for an online one. But then for the in-person ones, they are so time-consuming, but they're the best ones. They're so time-consuming because you have your different camera angles, all the audio is mangled together, so synchronizing that with your audio file, also then removing background noises because you might be in a big room and stuff like that, and then doing the things like editing, switching between cameras, exporting, because they're bigger files, they take longer to export, then doing your thumbnails, keywords, descriptions, all that stuff, scheduling. You're probably talking more like the 8 to 12 hours for an episode. But I'm here for that, because in-person episodes are so much more fun than online ones. Like, you can have great conversations online, and I won't discount that, but the ones in person, you just have a better rapport with someone, I feel like, because, like, I went to meet Curtis Rainey and Alex Cleary over in Belfast on 2 separate occasions, and because I got to meet them and speak with them beforehand, there was a bit of rapport. They could figure out my personality, I could figure out theirs. We could sort of figure out where the conversation was going to go. Whereas when you're online, what tends to happen is someone joins a call. Hi, you all right? Yeah, are you? Nice to meet you. Do you have any questions? No. Do you just want to get into it? Yeah, let's do it. Let's click record. That quick. So you don't really know what someone's personality is like. Unless you've listened to episodes previous, you don't really know how they're going to respond or how they are going to act in terms of how they hold themselves during an episode. It's very, very different. So doing the in-person ones are so much more fun, but they are a lot more time consuming. And obviously travel as well. You've got to travel to places. Like, next weekend, I'm going down to Birmingham to do an episode with David Hayes, who reached out to me, actually. He is a stand-up paddleboarder who's broken many records and changed his life. He was in prison for 2 stints in prison, addicted to gambling, drugs, and changed his life, and is now a professional stand-up paddleboarder. And he's traveling like 400 kilometers to Birmingham on a paddleboard for me to meet him at this event that he's doing. So I get to do that, but that means like I have to obviously drive there, so that's 3 hours of driving there and back. the time with the person. And I'm not saying I don't want to do that. I absolutely love that. I love meeting people, getting to know people. So getting to spend time with them is great. But you have to count that in. So sometimes an in-person episode can be full, like 24 hours, if not more. Like the Alex Cleary one, I flew to Belfast at 8 a.m, got there at 9, got home at 11:30 that night. You know, was editing in the day and stuff, and then met him, did the episode, then went for dinner with him and stuff, had a great time, flew home, then edited the episode. So that was probably a full 24-hour stint, that whole process. But I love it. It's great. I genuinely can't complain. I get to do it at the end of the day. I get to be the person who asks the questions, get to be the person who edits it, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's fantastic. What have I learned since starting the podcast? This is a really, really good one, I think. A really good question that I've been asked by a few people. I'd say the main thing that I've learned during this process is that no one else is going to do the work for you. Like I said before, in terms of mental health, but also in terms of stuff like this. If I don't edit and, you know, reach out to people and stuff, no one else is going to do that. I'm not going to have these conversations. It's all on me at the end of the day. Whatever goes out there is all on me. And some people may, you know, be like, oh, it's too much time, can't be asked, this and that. Well, that's fine, don't do it. But at the end of the day, if it means I've got to edit till 1, 2 in the morning sometimes and get like 4 or 5 hours sleep just because I've got to get up for work or what have you, that's fine by me, because I know it needs to get done. I know I need an episode to go out every Monday. That's my plan. That's, you know, what keeps me going forward. So that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned, is that no one else will do the work for you. Another one is that people from all walks of life can have massively interesting stories. And a lot of these people don't have followings because not everyone cares about social media. So sometimes to find these people, you have conversations with, you know, you may have met someone, they go, oh, I know this person who does this. So I'll ask, can you put me in touch with this person? Like, that's the main way. That's a lot of the way that I do it. So that's a big one, is that anyone can have a really interesting story. Another big learning curve for me was that descriptions and stuff for YouTube take so much effort. Like, they genuinely do. They're probably the most boring part of it. Descriptions and thumbnails and titles and SEO keywords and all that is just long-winded. Like, that's the part. There's not really much that I don't enjoy about podcasting, but that is the one that I don't enjoy. I fucking hate coming up with a title for a podcast. You have an hour and a half conversation with someone about 1,000,001 topics, and you've got to come up with an 8-word title. It's just draining. It's genuinely draining. But yes, that's my one pet peeve of podcasting. Another question I get asked is, how do I find my guests? So a lot of the time I find them through Instagram. I find them through LinkedIn. DEA agents specifically through LinkedIn. A lot to do with the opioid stuff that I've done is through LinkedIn. You can find some great people on there. You can also find some weapons on LinkedIn, FYI. And yeah, Instagram's a good one. I find a lot of people through that, which is fun. I also use some different podcast directories like matchmaker.fm, podcast directory, I think, was another one. Find a few guests on them. Like, I'm not saying you're going to get like, I've had some guests on which have done really, really well, and I didn't expect to from those places. But I've also had guests which absolutely tanked. But that's fine. Like, I enjoyed the conversations I had with the people. So I get them through that. And then more recently, I get a few reaching out to me. Now the podcast is growing a bit. People started reaching out to me a bit more. to jump on the podcast, which is, it's a sign of progress to me. So happy days. And then also, if sometimes like Louis Alexander, I wasn't familiar with Louis. Alex put me onto him. Alex said, you should interview this guy. What he's doing is great. Professional explorer. So he helped me reach out, and got to him that way. So sometimes it's a case of being helped. Sometimes it's just a case of sending a random DM or an email to someone and hoping for the best. A lot of the time, I'm going to say, for all the people that have replied, times that by 50, the ones that don't, and that's fine. Some people won't get back to you, and some people do get back to you. And there was one particular case, it's genuinely so funny. I'm not going to say who it was, but essentially I reached out to him and his team, big advocates for some charity work that they've been doing. Fair enough. When you're raising awareness for charities and stuff, you would think people would jump at any opportunity to help raise awareness with a new audience. And I got told that I didn't have a large enough audience. And I was like, the fucking cheek. But you get setbacks. And also, it's quite funny because when someone's like that, I wouldn't really want them on the podcast anyway. So I'm quite kind of glad that it was like that. Oh, another thing I've learned during the podcast is some guests do not look away from the phones. They literally are like, I've done episodes where you can find them, where basically people have been doing the interview, and then I thought the interview's gone great, which, the answers were good, but then when I'm editing it and I'm looking at their camera, they are just on the phone the entire time, barely paying attention to a single word I'm saying. And, I get you got busy lives, but, if you're going to say yes to a podcast, just put the phone away, So something I now say before I do a podcast, because it does infuriate me, is with guests, I'm like, look, I get you've got a busy life, but please do not go on your phone. I would appreciate full attention because, if we're doing an interview, we may as well do it well and stuff like that. So, they're the main questions I've been asked about the podcast. That's going to be episode 50. I've been rambling for a fucking hour. Jesus Christ. So, you got to know a bit about me, about my 100-kilometre run from Point Impossible car park to Apollo Bay. And you've got to hear some of the frequently asked questions to do with the podcast. So, I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please leave a like, comment on YouTube, and also subscribe, and leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It helps me just reach broader audiences and stuff. So it would be greatly appreciated if you could all do that. That would be fantastic. So, this is episode 50 special. Thank you all for the support over the 50 episodes. Couldn't do it without that. And I can't wait to see where the next 50 takes us, and the 100 and the 150 after that. I'm so excited for what's to come because there's a lot of things happening in the works at the minute. So thanks for listening if you got this far, and I will see you next Monday for another episode.